So e-waste is a topic and a word that many of us are familiar with, but not all of us actually know a lot about e-waste. So what we're going to do today is dive into that topic for you. So for what is e-waste? E-waste is a popular informal name for electronic products nearing the end of their useful life. Certain components of some electronic products containing materials actually render them to be labeled hazardous. For example, the CRT model or the CRT monitors in California are labeled as hazardous, interestingly. And actually, a large number of what is deemed as hazardous material isn't completely hazardous, just a couple parts in it, and for the most part they could actually be refurbished, reused, or recycled. A couple examples of e-waste that you probably use in your everyday life are computers, tablets, phones, fax machines, printers, copiers, scanners. The list goes on, and all of these materials could be e-waste at some point in their product life cycle. And now some statistics about e-waste just in general. In 2009, e-waste in America actually totaled to about 2.37 million tons. And overall, e-waste represents about 2% of America's overall waste, and actually about only 70% of America's toxic waste. And another fact is that only about 12.5% of e-waste is actually recycled. So that's a huge margin that, especially in the future, we'd like to look to decrease.
So the question I'm going to be going over today is what causes e-waste? And one reason is cell phone upgrades. We're seeing more frequent upgrades because phone companies are leading to a quicker turnover of phones because they are encouraging customers to upgrade when their current phone isn't even obsolete. The phones that are sold under mobile contracts aren't meant to last for more than 2 years because they know that people are going to be getting rid of them, switching to the newer model, upgrading their storage, etc. The next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is the current structure of the mobile phone contracts. We are now seeing carriers moving over to the 1-year contract so that they can get customers into the phones faster and faster, even if it means paying more on their monthly bill. And the next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is the value of recycling versus the value of keeping the phone. The main reason why we're seeing an increase in e-waste is because people just don't have the incentive to recycle. One particular thing that came about was people were given envelopes to recycle their phones by sending them off in the mail, but this didn't happen because people found it more convenient to just keep the phone in their drawer and use it as a spare. In the end, it becomes a question of value, not just money. The value of having a spare phone at the ready is greater than the value of saving the environment, and this leads to a massive number of phones sitting in drawers. The value of recycling, the intangible benefit towards the environment, is a low incentive for people. The next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is about the phones that are in the landfills. Phones are quickly filling up the landfills because there is a lack of incentive to recycle. And this means that a lot more mobile phones will end up in landfills, creating 70% of the country's overall toxic waste. This poses a serious issue because the materials within the phones, like lead, mercury, arsenic, and cadmium, chlorine, and bromine, leak out into the environment and represent a toxicity issue for the environment and anyone who comes into contact. The next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is in these phones that are being thrown away are precious metals that are non-renewable resources for us. This includes gold, and people are constantly throwing their phones away without even considering this. Every year, Americans dump phones filled with $60 million worth of gold and silver. For every 1 million cell phone that is recycled, 35,274 pounds of copper, 772 pounds of silver, 75 pounds of gold, and 33 pounds of palladium can be recovered. We are currently only recycling 8% of phones, and this needs to change. The next thing I'd like to talk to you guys about is the negative effects of throwing away these metals. The excavating of precious metals and the manufacturing of the metals that go into these phones is energy and water intensive. Without recycling, we increase the amount of greenhouse gases because an extra 84,000 tons of carbon emissions is released into the atmosphere to manufacture new phones to replace the old ones with the current model. Thank you.
E-waste is made up of harmful elements and chemicals, which when improperly disposed can create many problems. These include both environmental and health-related issues. Impacts of e-waste components containing chemicals and other elements. Harmful chemicals and elements can be found in e-waste. Some of these can include lead, arsenic, barium, mercury, and zinc sulfide. In the picture, you can see e-waste parts that contain harmful components. E-waste in the landfill. The amount of e-waste in landfills or being incinerated is currently much larger than the amount being recycled. 3.14 million tons of e-waste was generated in 2013, and of that, 60% was trashed, meaning that it was put into landfills or incinerated. You can see on the chart the light blue line. That is e-waste that's being trashed. This line is much higher than the cyan line, which is e-waste being recycled. The dark blue line is the total e-waste being generated. Impacts of the disposal process on e-waste in landfills and incinerators creates problems such as the inhalation of toxic fumes, as well as from accumulation of chemicals in the soil, water, and food. The image shows toxic waste legislation. Red countries such as the United States have not become involved in international legislation regarding toxic waste disposal. Orange and yellow countries have some involvement, and green countries have even more involvement.
So after hearing all the negative effects of e-waste, you're probably wondering, what can you do to reduce it? We came up with 4 ideas to reduce the impact of e-waste. The first is recycling, prolonging technology, donating used electronics, and using multifunction devices. First one is recycling. Companies such as Best Buy and Staples actually collect customers' e-waste, and they recycle it for them, and the customer can even be reimbursed. E-waste has a lot of recoverable materials such as gold, silver, and copper, and Sustainable Electronics Recycling International sets the R2 standard and explains processes for businesses to recycle their e-waste. Second is prolonging technology. This would be things like not using smartphone upgrades, because if you have a perfectly good phone, you don't necessarily need to be getting a new one if it's still functional. You can also use cases. These make the devices waterproof and protects them from drops. And turning off electronics when not in use, such as laptops, televisions, and gaming consoles. Keeping devices clean helps them last longer, and avoid overcharging batteries. So don't plug your phone in if it's at 100%, because it's not going to do any good. Third is donating used electronics. You can donate used electronics if the electronic can still be used, but make sure you erase all your data before donating. A couple of donating organizations are Reconnect, the Wireless Foundation, Strut, Computers for Kids, and eBay Giving Works. The last one is using multifunction devices. These are devices that have more than one function to them, and the biggest example would be smartphones and tablets, because a smartphone or tablet includes all 7 of these items: video camera, GPS, calculator, telephone, music player, radio, and computer in it, so that eliminates the need for 7 other appliances all in one. These are a list of sources, and I thank you for watching.